right, good morning everybody. For those of you that I haven't met, I don't think there are very many. My name is Jack Hawthorne. I'm General Counsel for Keller Williams Heritage. So I'm one of the 2 attorneys on staff. We've actually recently bumped it up to 2.5. My wife is full on with our firm and she's been representing KW agents. So she's getting up to speed. Eventually we'll just have 3 attorneys on staff. So the reason that we're having this conversation, the reason we're talking about multiple offers is because, and this sounds dramatic, we are burdened by your success. Heritage is crushing everyone else in San Antonio. Because of that, we have a lot more listings. We have a lot more buyers we're representing in multiple offer situations. The information that we give you guys, and I don't even give the rest of my offices a lot of time because frankly it doesn't fly. That's why we're doing this. We want to make sure that you guys succeed. We want to get you as much money for your clients as possible. We want to make sure that your clients feel well represented. But most importantly, I want to make sure your production is where you want it to be. So if you get one thing from this presentation, then it's worth it to me to make sure that you guys win a deal that you may not have otherwise won. So, whoops, I forgot. I don't have a PowerPoint. I'm so used to having a PowerPoint. Does anyone not have a handout? Excellent. All right, so I'm going to cheat and look at the handout because I rewrote it this morning. My memory's not that good. So, number 1 issue we run into, I have a listing, I'm in a multiple offer situation, what do? The reason this is so important is because 1, your client gets really upset if they don't feel like they were represented correctly. In some markets, and San Antonio luckily is not one of them, but in some markets, if you have a multiple offer situation, you have a 25% chance of having a direct complaint filed against you. Standard. Because agents get upset. You didn't present my offer the way you said you were going to. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. Well, they don't know. They have a couple of emails, and they've decided that you didn't do your job, and now you have to deal with the direct complaint. San Antonio, not as popular, but it does happen. This is why we want to talk about this. You can avoid that problem. You can make sure your sellers feel well represented, and you can get the most money for them, which is ideal. So the number 1 thing you want to do, consult with your seller. If you're in a multiple offer situation, talk to the seller. I know it sounds mundane, I know it sounds like something we would all do, but you're in real estate, your mind is running a million miles an hour, your client comes to you for professional advice, so you said, okay, we have 3 offers, this is what we're going to do. Take the time to have that conversation with the seller. We're in multiple offer situation. Here's what that means, here's what I would recommend you do. Does that sound like a plan to you? Is there anything else that you want to see done? Is there anything really important to you? The reason I say that, if they're in a huge time crunch, you may say, well, why don't you just tell everybody what the offer is and whoever does the best offer wins? Well, it's usually not the best option because it doesn't produce the most money. If you have 3 offers at $220, I say, okay, listing price was $215. If I tell everybody the offer was $220, you're probably going to get 3 offers at $221, $222, something along those lines. Now, they may be fine with that to get the process moving. They may not care about multiple offer situations. They may not want to create a bidding war. This may not be important to them. And I'll say this again when we're talking about the buyer side, throwing money at somebody is often the best solution to about every problem, but it's not always the best solution. And they may have things that are more important to them than money, like time, stress, just getting it done. There are people, and I'm sure some of you guys have encountered them, they don't care what multiple offers come in, I just want to take them in chronological order. I don't care if one's higher, I don't care if one's less, and while that makes no sense to me whatsoever, everybody's different, everyone is entitled to make well-informed bad decisions. So that is what we're going to do, is to give them good information so they can make a well-informed decision, and hopefully they make the right one. The single most important thing you can do in a multiple offer situation on your listing is to use the TAR form for resubmission invitation. The reason that's so important, if you get 2 offers, counter both. Say, all right guys, listing price is $215, I got 2 offers, one at $217, I got one at $220, we want $222, we think that's what's fair, we think we can get you guys up to that. You counter both offers. One person accepts, great, call your seller, hey, we just got an accepted offer, fantastic, moving forward. You go back to your email, let the other agent know, you already got an email, hey, we accept. Your seller's now under contract with 2 different people. Texas is what's called a notice state. You are under contract not when you sign, you are under contract not when you get it back to your realtor. You are under contract when your realtor, or you if you're not represented, lets the other side know that you've accepted. Even if that's just an email that said, okay, you sent us these terms over, we accept, we're good to go. You're now under contract. Now, can we wiggle out of that? Sure. I fight much worse fights for you guys every day, but it's a fight you don't have to have. The way to avoid that fight, use the invitation to resubmit, everyone send your highest and best, you go from there. That means you haven't countered any offers. You've rejected all offers and invited them to come back with a better offer. That way you can deal with them as they come in. There is no limitation on how many times you do this. I have people that do it 2 or 3 times. I always recommend it. That's up for you to decide, and that'd be a great question for the agents that come up here and talk to you about their particular strategies in dealing with multiple offers. All right, this is really important to me, and the reason it's important to me is because this is what keeps you from getting TREC complaints. Give a timeline. We're going to submit offers Sunday at 3 p.m. And then, much more importantly, honor that timeline. If you tell people we're submitting at 3 p.m. on Sunday, and you say, you know what, we got a great cash offer Saturday night, I submitted and they accepted, sorry. You will get a TREC complaint, and you will probably get a TAR complaint too, which are much more lengthy and a much bigger pain in the butt because we actually have to have a hearing. And you have to go with me, and usually it's in Austin. So we'll commute, it'll be great, we'll bond over the experience. It's probably an unnecessary use of your time. It's a little bit worse than jury duty because not only are you going to the same equivalent as jury duty, you're also the person on the stand. So we want to avoid TAR complaints as much as possible. If you give that timeline, stick to the timeline, and I do encourage you to give the timeline because it makes your life a lot easier. This is also incredibly important. This is the #1 reason that TREC complaints that go through, we get, without any exaggeration whatsoever, at any given time, I have 60 to 70 TREC complaints I'm dealing with. This is one of the few things where you will actually get sanctioned. One of the few things that I can only fight so much. Do not give preference to your own offers. If you have a multiple offer situation and you represent a buyer on that listing, I would recommend in that particular instance, if you don't have a buyer's agent on your team, refer to someone else in the office, take a great referral fee, build that relationship, move on. Because if you have the buyer and you have the listing and it's a multiple offer situation, they are going to feel like you steered them if anything doesn't go totally well. So that's just my advice for TREC complaint, TAR complaint, I guess handling. I understand that it is less production. It is less money. It is much easier for me to come up here and say, give your money away so you don't get a complaint filed against you, and I understand the practicality of that. This is a practice point. Do with that information what you will.
Speak up a little bit, Jack.
Absolutely. All right, guys, so just as important as what to do, what not to do. And we've hit most of these already, but I want to touch base on it really quick, which is don't counter multiple offers, reject them, give an offer to resubmit, move on that way. It's so much cleaner, so much easier for you, and honestly, it produces much more income for your clients for the most part. Don't disregard the timeline. Don't disclose confidential information unless you have permission to. So, everyone in here that's had multiple offer situation on their listing has had this conversation. Buyer's agent calls you up. Hey, I'd really like to get this house for my client. We've had 5 fall through. They're about to fire me because I can't get them a house. What do I need to come in at? Your best offer that you can make. What is it? I need to know. I need to know. We'll meet it. We'll do it. They got the cash. They can do it. I understand that. I apologize. I'm not able to disclose that information. I haven't given permission to do so. Please come in with your best offer. We really hope that you guys get it. You seem like you'd be great to work with. Now, what can you do? I can tell you what's really important to my client. What's really important to them, and they've made sure that I know this so that I can make sure that you know this, is that they are not stressed out about moving. It is really important to them they have some form of lease back. So I can tell you that regardless of what your price is, what would be really, really beneficial to them, what would really carry a lot of weight with them, is if you provided some kind of lease back at no charge to make sure that they weren't stressed out about moving and they had 3 or 4 or 5 days after closing to take care of things. That's not confidential. That's something that you've asked your client about before. Do you mind if I tell them this? This is really important to you. I think we can definitely get you some offers that include this provision. Find a win. Find something for them. Like I said earlier, sometimes throwing money at them is the best option, but every once in a while, every great once in a while, there's something else that's a win other than the money that's more important to them. Figure out what that is. Have that conversation. Find how you win with your client, find how you lose with your client, and then focus on those wins and make sure the other side knows how to win as well. Yes?
Tell one, tell all.
Absolutely.
Buyer A comes in the morning, gives you an offer. You say, I'll submit it. Here, I'm going to be meeting with my folks by 5 o'clock this afternoon. Offer B comes in. Buyer B comes in, say at 3 o'clock. You, of course, they call ahead of time. You tell them there's already an offer on the property.
Absolutely.
But you fail to call back the number at buyer A and notify them now that it's a multiple offer situation. you could be, that would be it may not be a license act violation, but it could and possibly be a TAR complaint, because you did not notify all parties of the same information.
And I've seen it as a direct complaint.
It is, well, they'll still file it.
Because to me, not even just filing, to me, you violated your fiduciary duty. If you have a buyer that puts in an offer, and then you get another offer later that day, if you don't call that first buyer's agent back and say, hey, by the way, we're in a multiple offer situation, do you want to stick with your offer as is, or would you like to amend?
And not verbal.
No.
That's the biggest complaint. I get them all the time. I say, well, I told them verbal. I said, well, how do you want me to, how can I help you with that when I don't have anything to back that up?
Right.
Now it's your word against theirs.
Absolutely. Everything worth doing is worth putting in writing, and it's worth over-explaining just a little bit. So the way that my stance on this, and I've told you guys this multiple times, when you get to the point where you feel like you've done too much communication-wise, too much covering your bases, too much showing that you did your due diligence to make sure everyone knows what's going on, go just a little bit further. Because that's how I protect you. That's what allows me to do my job. You can get a stupid speeding ticket, and if I don't have any proof to the contrary, it's really hard for me to fight it. They can get a ticket for your sign when they follow it to the wrong open house and say, oh, you didn't have a sign. I understand, it does have a sign, I can defend that because I show we have permits on your sign. You need to take them to it if you have to. If I have evidence, I can almost always win if I have evidence. Give me the evidence I need to protect you. The great byproduct of giving me all the evidence I need to protect you is that you will never have to deal with any problems because you did everything you were supposed to do up to that point. That tends to be the rule. Obviously there's some variation, but there's as much volume as you guys can go through, you're going to hit crazies. It's going to happen. I don't know if anyone knows this or not, because it's certainly not something I publicize all that often. I have had 16 grievances filed against me with the bar since I started with Keller Williams.
Which bar?
Because when they file a direct complaint against only 16. When they file a direct complaint against you, they file a grievance against me. They said, you're not acting ethically as an attorney because of X, Y, Z. Now, I've never had anything more than a letter saying, hey, by the way, there was a grievance filed, we're going to deal with this, and then a month later they say, yeah, never mind, it's BS. Now, same thing with most of your direct complaints, but you still have to go through the motion. Understand that I am in this with you. I have a vested interest in you guys documenting everything because it makes my life easier. Help me help you. As many little corny sayings as I can so you guys remember. I figure if I go through the whole list, one of them will stick, but I promise you guys it helps out.
Jerry McGuire works real well.
That's right. All right, guys, so we're going to shift gears a little bit to I represent the buyer. So I am representing a buyer. I'm in a multiple offer situation. What are the things I need to make sure I do? Now, again, these are things that you're going to really want to talk practice tips on the agents that come up here. These are just what I see. So across the board with the offices that Carly and I represent, we will handle about 20,000 transactions this year, give or take. So as a rule, I see what works and I see what doesn't work, and I see what really doesn't work, and I see what wins it almost every time. So these are just from my point of view. So again, understand with a grain of salt where I come from. I come from a 10,000 foot view, not in the trenches. Now, I did sell real estate for a while, so I can at least empathize with what you're going through, but I wanted to give you what I know just in case it helps somebody. So, most importantly, what we talked about earlier, find a win for the seller. Have that conversation with the listing agent. I understand we're in a multiple offer situation, and I understand that money is number one on most people's list. What's number two? What is important to them? Is it a lease back? Is it being able to know that they're not going to have to do any repairs? Is it that they don't want to, closing costs are really big for them. They don't want to have to handle closing costs. Is it they got screwed over on a title in the past, on a title policy, on a survey, whatever it may be? Find that win. Sometimes a win can be $200 or $300 instead of throwing an extra $5,000 at them. Make them feel comfortable. Comfortable people like you more and they tend to want to work with you. Yes?
If a lease back is one of their most important things, can you note that on a form that says to everybody, resubmit and a lease would be?
Absolutely.
Can
Get
you
permission from the
notify that?
client, just to make, because technically it could be proprietary information, it's in their best interest. Let them know that. Absolutely. I put it out there, I would recommend you put it out there as much as possible. And then your client loves you too. That's the benefit of having this open communication. Your client said, I told them that this, and this were really important to me, and they hammered that to everybody they talked to. And I saw the emails where they hammered it. I love them because they actually paid attention to what I want them to pay attention to. That's why people come back.
Jack?
All right, yes?
Jack, the lease back at no cost.
Yes. So, no cost is a relative term. Mine, you have to charge at least $10, make it real. No cost is not mortgage payment prorated out for the
Yeah,
lease.
it's gotta have some value, $1
Some value,
something.
$1, $10. You have to have something as consideration behind it. That's just how Texas works. I understand why. Sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense. That's why every deed you look at says it was sold for $10, another good and valuable consideration. None of your business what that other valuable consideration is, but we put down $10. We made it real. So that is just to cover 3-day lease back at no cost, $1, $10, $100, whatever it may be, something to make it real. That doesn't mean they don't have to put down a security deposit because you want to take care of your clients, but letting them know that they can hang out for 72 hours after closing. There's some people that pack their house up in 2 days. They may not want to start packing until it closes. Maybe the last time they sold a house, 3 contracts fell through. They had to change movers twice. They ended up in a hotel. This may be what's important to them, and those are real world scenarios. Make them feel comfortable. Non-refundable earnest money after the option period expires. This is the clincher. If you want to win a multiple offer situation, this is my recommendation. It only works for well-qualified buyers. If you have a buyer that you know and they guarantee you've had that conversation, preferably in writing with the lender, that says they're going to qualify. We have no issues whatsoever. Unless they go out and buy a car tomorrow, we're going to be good. If you do that, you can convert the earnest money to being non-refundable the day after the option period expires. You can do that in special provisions with a very simple statement. All earnest money becomes non-refundable to the buyer within 24 hours after the expiration of option period. What does that mean as a practical effect? Your seller knows without a shadow of a doubt that if the buyer doesn't close on this property after the option period, they're keeping the earnest money. This is why I say you have to have a well-qualified buyer. Yes?
Is that not the same thing as putting not subject to financing approval?
You could. You could do that. The issue with just putting financing approval is I have about 500 ways I can get your buyer out of contract.
Oh.
There are 2 ways for a seller to terminate. There are about 30 for a buyer.
Got it.
So I say, earnest money, non-refundable after the option period expires. We've looked at the house. We've looked at what repairs we want. We figured out what's important to us. Unless, come hell or high water, we're buying this house at this point. Now, if something happens, that money's the seller's. We understand we've inconvenienced them because we held their house off the market. They know that money's in the bank. Yes?
Do you have, or would you mind typing that list of the 30 lists of buyers or just so that I know?
Sure. Send me an email. Because there are a lot of timelines. Yes?
What about appraisal? In that situation where you're forfeiting the earnest money, if you lose the earnest money with the bank?
Yep.
Okay. So
Make sure
regardless
you
of
do
any-
your homework. Now, you can put a caveat in there. We can make it as complicated or as simple as we want to. Say it becomes non-refundable unless the house appraises low. Something along those lines. Or, one of my favorite things to do is subject to attachment A as referenced in paragraph 22. So use the appraisal language form we have, attach it in there, because that's the one thing you want to reserve. Look, this house is appraised. I can't buy it. If it doesn't need property approval, that has nothing to do with me. That's you overpricing your house and I bid.
What about an FHA, VA?
FHA, VA, you're kicked out anyway. They can't stop you from terminating. Now, here's the thing. With the FHA and VA, you can terminate. You're not getting your earnest money back. You make it non-refundable. So that's the difference, is the third-party financing addendum does not reference earnest money in most cases. What it does say is you can terminate without being in breach. You get your earnest money back if you're not in breach, unless you've waived your right to get it back. So there are distinctions there. If it appraises low, I can terminate. It's not getting the earnest money back if I make it non-refundable.
Even on FHA, VA, as long as it's.
Even on FHA,
But it
VA.
has to be stated in the.
Correct.
in the
So
paragraph.
they can't stop you from terminating. You can stop yourself from getting the earnest money back as a leverage point. So this is why I tell you guys to make sure they're well qualified. Because if you make this recommendation on someone who's iffy and they lose their earnest money, if they're iffy on their financing, they probably can't afford to not get that $3 grand back if it doesn't work out. So take it with a grain of salt. Use it if appropriate, if you're comfortable with it. It's just one of the things that, like I said, if I'm in a multiple offer situation, if I'm monitoring in a multiple offer situation from the 10,000 foot view to make sure everything goes the way it's supposed to go, this is the thing that wins more often than not when you're dealing with it as a buyer. All right, guys, so 2 more real quick things, and the great thing about these is they're entirely unenforceable, but it makes it look good when it comes in. So, buyer's not going to ask for any repairs throughout this contract. You can write that in special provisions. That means your buyer's agreeing. I'm not going to ask for any repairs. but I found some things I'm gonna go and ask for repairs anyway. They can do that, but it makes the seller feel good coming in. That doesn't mean that it's binding. You have the ability to amend anything in the contract. That's why it's an amendment. You can change anything you want. Every contract you go into is as is anyway. This is literally meaningless in application, but it makes people have some warm and fuzzies, which is why I recommend it. If they intend to do that. Don't just
Is
wait
that
it out.
called bait and switch
It is.
somewhere else?
It is called bait and switch. I know what I am. I am ethically flexible, so you do not have to be.
Hey, Jack, by the way, where is that bar and does it have a happy hour?
So, anyway, guys, that is the rundown on if you represent the buyer. The last issue that I want to bring up, because again, with the market the way that it is, I've been hitting this a lot lately. I have 2 different buyers I represent, and they both are putting an offer in on the same piece of property. How do I handle that? Actually, not all that complicated. It's a little scary, it's a little iffy, but your odds just doubled on getting your contract accepted, which is exciting. So let's use that to your advantage.
That's funny.
The most important thing you can do, act as if you only represent one of them. When you talk to Mike and Jill, they're both making offers on this property. When I'm talking to Mike, I'm pretending like I don't even know who Jill is. When I'm talking to Jill, I don't know who Mike is. I don't know what they got offered. I don't know what their terms are. I don't know what they're coming in with. I don't know if they're making the earnest money non-refundable. I don't know if they're asking for repairs. I'm dealing with that client. You have a fiduciary duty to both of them, which makes it tricky. The reason I say it's tricky is because most people feel like they're violating the fiduciary duty for the wrong thing. If you don't tell your client that the other person is offering this, you're not violating your fiduciary duty, because that's not information they're entitled to. That's confidential information for someone else. If you tell them, well, Jill and Tony, you're offering 220, Mike's about to offer 222, you should at least offer 222. That is violating your fiduciary duty to Mike, because you have to protect him and his interest as well. Now, there is one really, really, really easy way to avoid this, and you guys should all probably be doing it anyway when you have time before an offer is made. CMAs, DPOs. If you're offering a comparative market analysis or broker price opinion, you are telling them what the market says that house is worth. That gives you tremendous validity and ammunition to protect yourself with 2 different offers. Because you can say, look, Mark says we're 220. When you offer, I'll be happy to give you advice on what I think. I think you should come in at 222. I think you should come in at 225. I think you should come in at 216. Whatever it may be. Give the same advice to both people and make sure that you're being impartial. Make sure you're not steering one or the other. It's important that you are perfectly equal in every way you possibly can be with both people. Now, that doesn't mean that if I talked about A, B, C, and D with Mike, that I have to make sure I talk about A, B, C, and D with Jill. It just means that my information has to line up with both of them. Now, proving that didn't happen, long process, incredibly complicated, probably won't ever actually go through fruition, but it's something I don't want you to even deal with. Now, one of the most important questions I get is, do I have to disclose this to both sides? The answer is no. You have no obligation to disclose to your buyers that you represent multiple buyers on the same property. My practical practice tip advice, I don't disclose it unless I'm asked. The reason for that, you have no duty to disclose. Once you let them know that you're representing 2 buyers on the same property, you have an immediate level of distrust you have to fight through. That's just across the board, something that I've noticed, and I always say disclose, disclose, disclose. This is one of the very, very few exceptions. Unless you're asked, I don't bring it up because it makes your life unnecessarily complicated and it provides them no benefit whatsoever to be aware of it, because you're upholding your fiduciary duty to both and you're giving them both the same advice. It does not affect them that you are representing 2 different buyers. That does not mean they will agree with that sentiment. Which is why I'm saying don't have that conversation unless you just decide you want to, or unless asked explicitly. Don't lie. Are you representing more than one person? Yes, I am. Okay. Then explain them. Give them the same advice to both people. I have to be impartial. I'm sure you can understand that. It's just a practice point. You're a good realtor. You're very busy. People want to use you. That's why they wanted to use you. That's why you have multiple people making the offer on the same house. It's a great house. Let's go back into why it's a great house. Why do you want to make the offer you want to make? Let's make sure your offer is as strong as possible, and then I put that to the side when I'm dealing with my other client. All right, before agents come up and talk to you guys, do you have any questions for me on the legalities or the ethics of multiple offer situations?
When representing the seller, Jack, you said if you offer a good offer for the reason,
now he wants to wait for 19 to see what else happens. What do you recommend?
My recommendation at that point is to send an email to everyone who sent out an offer, just letting you guys know we're going to submit on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Now, the only time that becomes an issue is they say in their offer, in special provisions, which is something I usually recommend everyone to do, this offer is immediately revoked within 48 hours of when it's supplied. That puts that timeline on them. If you put that in your offer, know that it's going to expire. That means it's not going to last until 5 p.m. on Tuesday, which means you should resubmit your offer without that language. Or, and it's kind of weird to do it like this, so I don't really recommend it. You can technically amend with the signature of the seller, but my recommendation is resubmit the offer. You have everything done, your buyers can just click through and sign it. But always give that timeline. That solves the problem. People can get as mad at you if they want. It's a practical application of what you're trying to do. I need a couple more days. We got 4 offers on Saturday. We're going to wait till Tuesday. If you don't like that, go buy a different house. Obviously, you want it. I think I saw a question in the back. Maybe not.
To the left.
Well, let's see, I saw an email, I don't know from you or somebody else.
Yeah.
That the language that you should do when you're doing email communication, this does not constitute an offer on the behalf of the.
So you can put that in, just like anytime you've ever gotten an email from an attorney, it has like 4 paragraphs at the bottom. This is not tax advice, this is not legal advice, this is not whatever, this is not whatever. None of that is actually effective for the most part. Boilerplate language tends to just be thrown out if there's any type of litigation involved. You can put this does not constitute an offer, but if you make them an offer, it constitutes an offer. That's the issue. Just like you have your homestead exemption on your house, that protects you from liability unless you let someone put a lien on your homestead. You don't get to have your cake and eat it too. Same kind of deal. Any other questions, guys?
Jack.
Yes.
I remember I called you one time with a question, and I think it's a really good question, so I'm gonna re-ask it to you.
Excellent.
Jack, I've received multiple offers, and one of them is amazing cash offer, although it's not the highest. Can I just counter that one offer of the cash to bring them up higher?
Okay.
So, I didn't know that, like, I just thought, oh, you get your highest and best, and you should counter the highest and best, you know, but Jack's like, no, you can just tell the one cash buyer, I want you to win, I need you to come up as, I need you to come up
Perfectly
first.
acceptable to do that. Just have that conversation with your seller. That's the real key there is, hey, we got 4 offers. One of them is clearly better than the other ones. Do you want me just to counter that one and see if we can get them up? And if they do it, great. If not, we'll send out an offer to resubmit to everybody else. Yes, sir.
So you're not required to send an offer to resubmit to everyone?
You can technically make a horrible decision and counter every offer you get. I don't ever recommend you do that ever, but it is certainly something you can do. Like I said, just like clients, agents have the ability to make well-informed bad decisions. So I don't recommend ever countering more than one offer at a time, but you do have the ability to just engage one person and say, look, clearly you have the best offer, or whatever you want to tell them. You have the best offer. We'd like to work with you guys. If you can bring it up to, even if your client, if your seller says if they give me 220, I'll do it. Bring up 220, we're in a contract.
But you don't wanna say you have the best offer.
It's entirely up to you.
I asked,
Why would they come up with the best offer?
I agree. I'm saying it's up to you.
Okay, good.
I asked because I recently submitted an offer for a client on a home that was active RFR. And 2 days later, I finally had them to respond back to me and say, hey, my clients are still waiting on a response. He goes, oh, well, we received another offer yesterday. So this was after I sent it, and we accepted, and that's okay legally.
It's okay. It's a crappy practice point. But, I mean, and that's, of all the realtors that are in the market, I think we have almost 10,000 realtors in San Antonio at this point under the board. There are a lot more bad ones than good ones. And unfortunately, it's not unethical to be bad at your job unless you violate your fiduciary duty. I wish it was unethical. It'd be awesome, but yes. Well, I'd shoot a timeline on it. Had they not responded, it just would have expired. So realistically, if they have an RFR, they're going to have a waiting period once they accept that offer to say, okay, we're going to have to put this against the, bless you, we're going to put this against the RFR to see what they want to do, see if they want to waive, move forward, but they still need to confirm receipt. Now again, people just don't sometimes. Like, okay, I got an offer. Now I'm just going to sit on that. I don't know why you wouldn't accept it. I don't know why you would give a confirmation that you received it. But like I said, there are people that are bad at their job. You can't do a whole lot about that. All right, guys. Oh, yes.
Just one real quick, so normally, if I get multiples, I email everyone and I say, we received multiple offers. Is that adequate, or would you seriously suggest using the resubmit form?
I always suggest using the TAR form. because, or the TAR form, they get now we call it TAR.
Yeah.
The TAR form, because it's formal, it's promulgated, you know there's no problems with it whatsoever. I don't have any issues with the email you send out. And as long as you say, we are rejecting all offers received,
Okay.
because that's the thing.
I don't use that language.
I would use that language.
Okay.
Make sure, because in Texas, you either accept or you reject. Those are the only two ways you can do things. Because if you counter, you've rejected their initial offer, and you are offering to them, now they have the ability to accept. It's incredibly important when you look at notice rules, because then they have the ability to notice you of acceptance. You've taken the power away from your client. Make them bring the offers, give yourself the ability to accept.
Got it. Thank you.
Last thing on this packet, it actually has nothing to do with multiple offer situations, but you guys had asked for it a little while back. So I provided my cheat sheet for repair amendment language. Now, I've been emailing this out a bunch, so I figured I would just give it out to the people that come to team meetings, because you guys are usually the ones that ask the questions, which is great. So we want to make sure you guys have that. If you have any questions, shoot me an email Garrett, swing by. We're here all the time. I think we both live here at this point. So just come by, we'll help you out with it, and I really appreciate y'all's time, and as always, I appreciate you coming to team meetings. It's always fun chatting with you. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Scott.